Welcome to Fair's Fair! And today we'll be doing why isekais are so popular, but more importantly, what's an isekai? I'm glad that you asked, hypothetical person. In Japanese, it means something similar to other world. Therefore, it is about a story where someone was in a world we could relate to, similar to our own world in modern times. They are reincarnated into another world full of fantasy elements, or they are transported into the future or far into the past, or they are summoned from our world. By some means, they leave the world that we all recognize and go to a world that we do not. First of all, it's convenient. Having someone be a super fish out of water means that this person is a great way for them to get away with expositing all about the world, because this person wouldn't know about that world, they would only know about our world, which is the knowledge that we possess. So they make a great insert for the character so that everyone can explain everything to them and it's not weird that they don't know. And if you heard all of those previous lines and could hear a tiny voice inside of you saying, "Lazy writing," you're right, but it's okay to take some shortcuts.
Hey sensei, what's chakra?
Well, Naruto, someone who has been living in our world and using chakra for the entirety of his life, and even went to school for it and had an entire dream based around becoming a ninja, which requires knowledge about that. Allow me to explain it to you so that I can explain it to the audience. Yeah, that didn't seem out of place at all. So long as excusing exposition isn't the only reason they're from another world and the only point at which the difference comes up, I'll give it a pass. The reason they're so well loved is because you can relate to these characters easily. They come from our world and they have knowledge that is pretty standard in our world, so it's easy for the viewer to self-insert with them. Usually. Or at the very least, it's easy to understand their perspective on this new world. That, I believe, is probably one of the major driving points for isekai, because you can definitely relate to the main character in some way, shape, or form that makes them stand out from the rest of the world that they're already in. This also adds to the novelty of it, because with the knowledge from our world, they're bound to have some kind of understanding that you wouldn't have in their world. Military strategy, or even just things that you have seen work in fantasy games are now potentially useful there, which is another part of self-insert, because it's fun to imagine that your knowledge from video games might actually be useful someday. I'll be sure to use my League of Legends knowledge while I'm duct taping 16 swords to a handgun to play Miss Fortune. Now, isekais can be a lot of fun, and there are some absolutely golden ones out there. There are also some so-so ones out there, there are some comedy ones out there, and it's become such a massively saturated genre that there's even ones out there making fun of isekais while being an isekai. But just because it's a saturated market does not mean that it is going to be all bad, and you shouldn't immediately assume an isekai is bad just because it's an isekai. Granted, once you've watched an episode or two, you can start making judgments about it, or depending on the isekai, you might be able to start making judgments about what it's going to be, just from how it's described. In Another World with My Smartphone does not exactly sound like an amazing anime. It doesn't sound like it has a particularly deep plot, and I don't feel like I'm going to be super into the character that's in it. But I'll tell you what, I'll go out and watch it, and I'll write a review about it for this channel, just to make sure I'm not talking out of my ass. But based on the reviews, the description, and the very few scenes I've seen from it, it kinda doesn't look like it's going to be doing anything revolutionary or have a deep character. But I think the major reason that they're so popular is definitely because of the relation that we can have to it as a character, and it's a great form of escapism. It's like video game The Show. It is all the knowledge that you have, or someone from our world has, put into a fantasy setting. It is a show that is like a video game. I love playing a fantasy game and doing something with all the knowledge I've had here. I love playing a sci-fi game with all the knowledge I've had here. I love going into other worlds with all the knowledge that I've had here. It only seems reasonable that I would enjoy a show about going to another world actually, while having all the knowledge from here. Not to mention, the isekai trope of reincarnating into another world is really great for me personally, because it's funny to think that all my previous clones that were operating this channel before me are in another world fucking something up there instead of fucking up the channel here. But like I said, video game The Show. And much like video games, it varies wildly in genre. Like I said, there are some really great ones. It's hard not to think of Rising of a Shield Hero. Absolutely beautiful. It's hard not to think of Jobless Reincarnation. The main character was a degenerate and a weeb and a terrible person and generally a jobless bum of a person, And it didn't go to the lengths of validating who he was, rather it used this as an opportunity for character growth, that he realized he had to be better than who he was and had to be a better person now. He's still a degenerate, but at least now he has ambition and things he wants to achieve. Then you've got the wildly comedic ones, like No Game No Life. A rather interesting isekai because the people who made No Game No Life and the people who made No Game No Life Zero seem to be confused about what kind of genre they're supposed to be. The series was ecchi fanservice the anime. Everything in it revolved around fanservice and achieving fanservice-y results. Here's hoping that the season 2 they inevitably get turns out to have just a little bit more in the way of story and preferably a struggle for the main characters. I could count with less than one hand the amount of times that the characters actually faced a real challenge in this anime. Meanwhile, No Game No Life Zero seems to have been on a completely different level, with a deep, intricate story. It wasn't an isekai at all. In fact, it was based entirely within the world of No Game No Life, just thousands of years before the actual series took place, with some really endearing characters, with a believable love story, a deep and intricate plot, and tragic outcomes, and heavy consequences for actions. Holy shit, were these written by the same people? But it also ranges from good to bad. You have the good ones, like I said. Jobless Reincarnation was pretty good for what I've seen of it. Rising of the Shield Hero is amazing for what I've seen of it. And then you have the bad, like our previous Fish in a Barrel anime. High school prodigies have it easy even in another world. Absolute pile of shit. Redo of a healer. Which, you know, I mean, if you're into that, then that's what you're into, but it's not a show, it's a porno. Let's be honest with ourselves, you're watching a porno. To the ones that are just downright comedic like Konosuba. It's not about being serious, it's not even about the end goal, it's just about being funny. As well as an adorable small girl firing the tactical equivalent of a Moab out of a stick.
私は誰にも負けたくないのです。行きます。我が究極の破壊魔法エクスプロージョン。
And if any of you tell me that that doesn't make her the best character in the show, well then you're just wrong, and you're also boring.
And you're ugly, just like your mum.
Then there's the almost One Punch Man-ian ones like Overlord, where I'm having trouble getting some actual stakes out of it. In any normal episode, there's really no stakes, and it's just him trying to fight around with his own personal issues or policies, politics, and other things that he's trying to smooth over, because he doesn't want to be just a horribly evil person. And then you'll have maybe 1 or 2 actual fights throughout the entire season. And I'll be totally honest, it's kinda hard to root for the guy when he is essentially the most powerful thing in existence. You have hinted that there's other things on his level, but we never fucking see any of them. And at the end of the day, he does some really fucking evil shit that makes it really hard to root for him. But this isn't a review for Overlord, so unless I hear a demand for it, I'm probably not gonna do one on Overlord. And I hope this has cleared up what an isekai is and explained at least the basic reasons why they're so popular, and why they're so popular to make. Because they're easy to make, they're easy to relate to, and it's a nice way to get exposition out of the way without feeling like you're spelling it out to people who should already know it. So yeah, that's the whole video on Video Games the Show. Like, follow, comment, subscribe, all the things that help me with the algorithm. And was this video helpful to you? Let me know. Do you think I was right about these things, or do you think I was wrong? If so, be down in the comments and be entertainingly angry.